Alaska's former governor Sarah Palin has joined a crowded field of candidates vying for the House seat vacated by the late Congressman Don Young.
Former President Trump endorsed the 2008 Republican vice presidential nominee over the weekend. Palin is joined by a number of prominent Alaska politicians and many less-known contenders. This is the state's first election using ranked choice voting. The special election's June primary will narrow the race down to the top 4 candidates before the general election takes place in mid-August.
For more, we want to bring in Anchorage Daily news reporter Nathaniel Herz. Nathaniel, Sarah Palin does bring a national political profile to this race, but is that an asset or a liability for her?
I'm going to answer that question with a resounding yes. I think both. Obviously, Sarah Palin's huge national platform. She's going to be able to draw, national scale fundraising and support from national level politicians. I think at the same time, Alaskans also, we're a small state. People like to be able to have that kind of proximity and access to their politicians. And I think there's some people that just, see her as bigger than Alaska at this point. Her arc in Alaska has been really interesting. I mean, obviously, everybody knows who she is here, as they do around the country. I think, when she was elected, initially, she started with an approval rating around 90%, got along really well with Democrats, maybe actually less so with Republicans. But since then, and since her run for vice president, her approval rating has really taken a huge dive. And, I think most recently I've seen in a poll was a few years ago where it was hovering in the 30% range with like 56% negatives. So she's pretty polarizing here. And I think that it'll be interesting to see how much purchase she gets with Republicans and then, more broadly among the Alaska public, because we have a huge block of independent voters here as well.
And Nathaniel, to your point, the most recent polling on Governor Palin is from October. Alaska Survey Research showed her approval rating at 31%, the same figure she was at back in 2018 when she mulled a challenge to Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski. But now Alaska has implemented ranked choice voting. So is it clear how that might change the dynamics of this race?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, we've seen very little polling on this race so far. There was a poll that was released yesterday that was highly speculative, included a candidate who's not even in the race. And I just think, you can look at it any number of different ways. And I think people are starting to ask those questions, but we're still trying to get through a primary here with 48 different candidates before we can even start thinking about a general election. And again, this is a fairly untested system of voting, not necessarily around the country, but even sort of nationally. It's just, I think everyone's trying to figure out, how do we pull this, how do we pull the primary with 48 candidates, but then how do you pull a general election where you've got multiple candidates and going through this ranked choice process? It's just not something that folks have a lot of experience with.
So in addition to all of that, just after announcing her bid, former President Trump offered unequivocal support for Sarah Palin. Mr. Trump beat President Biden by 10 points in 2020. Is it clear, Nathaniel, what a Trump endorsement means in the state of Alaska in 2022?
Trump won Alaska in 2020, although interestingly, Joe Biden won Anchorage, the largest city here. I mean, I think obviously Trump has a lot of traction with Republicans in Alaska. Again, I don't think that Sarah Palin, there's no one in Alaska who doesn't already have an opinion about Sarah Palin. And so I think the idea that Trump is going to be pushing people here one way or the other is probably pretty tenuous. I really think Palin's, the way people see Palin here, it's interesting. She was never in the Republican establishment in Alaska. She kind of came to notoriety and power here actually by kind of taking on the oil industry and some of the establishment Republicans. So there's still a lot of lingering kind of tension between her and some of the more mainstream folks in the Republican Party. And then there are also complicated feelings that Alaskans have about her decision to resign in the middle of her term. I think, some folks are diehard Palin fans, conservative Republicans, but there are a lot of folks across the political spectrum that I think are also still mad at her for leaving at that time.
Nathaniel, you told us last time you joined about the very crowded field Governor Palin is now entering. Santa Claus aside, perhaps, who are some of the other notable candidates in this field?
Well, I actually think we should not skip past Santa Claus, and here's why. Santa Claus is a duly elected member of the city council in the city of North Pole, which is just a little bit outside of Fairbanks. I mean, obviously, he's not soliciting or accepting campaign contributions. He is a self-described democratic socialist. And when he announced last week, there was actually, a pretty resounding kind of seal of approval that he got from a number of progressive activists around the state. I'd love to hear if AOC is going to endorse him, for example. I mean, we've got sort of a wide range. Al Gross, an independent who ran with the endorsement of the Democratic Party for U.S. Senate in 2020 unsuccessfully against Dan Sullivan. He's running again, has been raising a lot of money in the early days of the campaign. There's a registered Democrat, Chris Constant, who's been running since before the late U.S. Representative Don Young died. There are a couple of Republicans who were co-chairing Don Young's reelection campaign, State Senator Josh Freeback and Tara Sweeney, who was a high-level member of President Trump's Department of Interior. They're also running. And then there's a couple other really good stories. Nick Begich, the grandson of Nick Begich Sr., who was killed in a plane crash that ultimately led to Don Young being elected in 1973. He's running, along with Emil Nadi, who Don Young defeated in his very first election in 1973. So it just, 48 candidates, a lot of folks who are maybe more fringy, but a lot of really big names. And we really don't know how this is going to shake out, because how do you pull a race with 48 candidates?
Sounds like a political reporter's dream for a reporter up in Alaska. And speaking of all that, shortly after Governor Palin said she would run for Congress, Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski said she would back Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's bid for the Supreme Court. What's the significance of Senator Murkowski's decision? How might that figure into her relationship with Governor Palin?
Well, I mean, I was just reading coverage of Senator Murkowski was asked about, about former Governor Palin's candidacy, I think today, and kind of made a relatively dismissive remark. I mean, I think there's this idea that Sarah Palin is a figure in Alaska state politics right now that actually has relationships. And, I'm not saying this with any kind of value judgment, but I've lived and reported in Alaska for 10 years. And up until Saturday, when we had a chance to briefly interview her at Don Young's memorial service, I had never so much as seen, let alone talked to Sarah Palin before. So, you talk to a number of people in Alaska's political establishment. Like, I talked to our Republican governor, Mike Dunleavy, at that memorial service, and I asked him, when was the last time you saw Sarah Palin? And he said it was 3 years ago. So I think, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see how Palin figures into that U.S. Senate race, where Lisa Murkowski is being challenged by a Trump-endorsed former high-level member of the state government administration here. But whether Palin is really going to try to take on Murkowski, who's in a different race, as President Trump has done. President Trump has said he's going to be up here campaigning for Lisa Murkowski's challenger at some point. I think it's, again, still a little too early to tell.
All right, fascinating dynamics in your state. Nathaniel Herz. Nathaniel, I will keep an eye on Santa Claus after this conversation. Nathaniel, thank you.
Yeah.